Welcome back everybody to another video at EICMA, the biggest and best motorcycle show in the world, and we're here to bring you all the latest exciting bike releases. Not many more exciting than this. This is the new Suzuki V-Strom 800DE. It's a brand new platform, new engine, new chassis, and so in this video I'm going to give you 5 things that you need to know about it. First up, we've got the brand new engine. We've just talked about the Suzuki GSX-8C, that's the naked version, but this bike also inherits this new parallel twin. So this will probably in the next year or so replace the V-Strom 650. It's a really good bike. People really love that V-twin, the 650 V-twin. It's got a nice feel, a decent amount of mid-range. It sounds nice as well, but it was a bit long in the tooth, and obviously emissions regulations are getting stricter and stricter, so it's time for a new engine, and this is it. So 774cc, I think I'm right in saying, 82 horsepower, so a little bit more power than the 650. A little more torque as well. I think it's 78 Newton meters at 6,800 RPM. So this looks like a nice change. The good thing about the parallel twin is they're cheap to produce as well, because you've only got one cylinder head. They're compact, so you can play with the way that they're positioned in the chassis to optimally get that handling and the center of mass right. And also with the 270-degree crank, you know, it's probably going to sound pretty similar and feel pretty similar to a V-twin. So I think the benefits probably outweigh the cons of this sort of platform. There's a lot of parallel twins on the market at the moment, which is maybe a little bit boring, but it's business, isn't it? They've got to make the best bike possible at the best possible price point, and so I think that's why they've gone with this parallel twin. As for the chassis, well, we've got a new steel frame, which they say is nice and robust. Obviously, that's going to be a big concern if you want to off-road this bike, and also a bolt-on subframe, which is a really important point for an adventure bike, because if you do want to take it off-road and you drop it and you bend the subframe, you don't want to write the whole bike off if it's welded on. So this one's bolted on, which is good to see. Also the same with the passenger foot pegs as well. Those are bolt on as well. Suspension-wise, we've got a pretty slick setup on this bike. So it gets a SHOWA fork and a SHOWA shock, and they're fully adjustable as well. So if you do want to off-road it, that's going to be really important to get the suspension absolutely dialed to how you want it. And also, you know, a bike like this is meant for touring. You can see this particular bike's got luggage and the windscreen up there. You've got handguards to keep a bit of wind off your knuckles as well. And so this is certainly a bike that could do some distance, maybe with a passenger, maybe with luggage, or you could go solo off-road. And so that's why you might want to get the suspension absolutely dialed with the preload, for example. It sits pretty tall, 220 mil of travel front and rear, so that's proper off-road spec. The old V-Strom 650 actually sat quite low. It was a low-slung bike. It didn't really have much in the way of off-road performance, and so this should be a much better bike if you're off tarmac. And it's also got plenty of ground clearance, so I said 220 mil of travel, but also 220 mil of ground clearance. Up front, let's go around here, we've got the 21-inch front wheel, so again, spoked. That's going to give it more ability to roll on rough surfaces, so that's going to make it feel like a better off-roader. And whereas the naked version of this bike gets quite sporty looking 310 mil discs with these radially mounted NISSIN calipers, the brakes on this look a little bit more gentle. They're 2-pot, but that's probably intentional. It's not like a downgrade in spec. It's probably more so to give it less of that harsh bite and more gradual progression, so that you can fine-tune the braking when you're on those loose surfaces like gravel roads and such. Tires are Dunlop Trail Max mixed tour tires, so a little bit of on-road and off. It took me a little while to remember what they were there. You can see they've got a semi-knobbly pattern, so probably mostly suited to the road, but they'll do a little bit of light off-road as well. So yeah, a pretty impressive chassis spec. It looks like it'll be decent off-road. Clearly this bike is going to be compared a lot to the Tenere 700 from Yamaha. That's the default in the segment of middleweights if you want something that is okay on the road but really quite good off-road, and so it'll be interesting to see how this performs versus that bike. It looks like the spec in some areas is maybe a little bit better. The engine's got a bit more power, the suspension maybe looks a little bit better spec, but it's all going to be, you know, the proof's in the pudding. We want to go and ride one and see how it actually feels. Tech-wise, it's had an update, much like the naked bike, so we've got this new color 5-inch TFT display, ride-by-wire throttle as well now, so you've got different engine maps. There are 3 levels of traction control, so you can dial that up and down, but also there's a G mode, which is a mode that it's inherited from the bigger sibling, the 1050 V-Strom, and that stands for gravel. And what that does is allows a lot of rear wheel slip, so you can slide the back end and really spin it up and do those drifts on gravel, but there's just enough TC intervention that it doesn't get crazy out of control and, you know, flick you off the bike. So that's nice to know. I think you can probably switch the traction control completely off as well if if you so wish. And ABS, there's 2 modes. So you've got ABS on, but also you can disable the ABS on the rear. And again, that's for getting on the back brake, sliding the rear out, and that can help you to perform tighter turns and things like that when you're riding off-road. On top of that, you've got their easy start, so you just press the starter button once and it fires up, no need to hold it. And it's also got their low RPM assist, and that gives you a little bit more tick over when you're pulling away, in the hope of stopping you from stalling it. One thing I will say about this bike though, 20-litre tank, plenty of range, windscreen, adjustable up and down, the option for luggage, a nice big saddle here, looks really comfortable. Feels like it could be a decent little touring bike, you know, that middleweight sort of adventure tourer, and yet there's no cruise control. This is a bugbear of mine. You know, we've got the ride-by-wire throttle, some of the tech is there that enables cruise control, and it just feels like such an important feature for a touring bike. So maybe a bit of a shame not to see that here. Also, there's no phone connectivity. If that's something that bothers you, then maybe you want to look elsewhere. I haven't seen any mention of it in the press release. There's no integration with the TFT dash or anything like that. But then again, some people aren't really bothered about seeing their phone on the dash. And so if you just want the basics, good traction control options, the ability to switch the ABS off at the rear, a few riding modes, then, you know, it delivers on the good basic stuff, apart from the cruise control. Anyway, it comes in a few different colorways, mate, so let's have a look at them. This is the yellow and blue, inspired by the DR Big of the 80s, when they launched the 1050 V-Strom here at EICMA 3 years ago. This was a bold new look with the angular shapes to it and this sort of 80s, 90s inspired color scheme. Looks really good on this middleweight version as well. Over here we've got the black version with the blue highlights along the bottom. I do like the front end on these bikes. It's got a sort of stacked headlight design that's similar to the GSX S1000. I like the front end, I like the general look of it. I even don't mind this little beak and these fork guards. I think it does give it a little bit of that retro dirt bike look. And then over here, let's go, mate. There's a gray one, which I think might be the best looking one of the bunch. I do like my Suzukis in grey. I had the GSX S1000 for review a couple of days ago. That was in grey and it looked pretty smart. Look, let's get ourselves to the front here, bud. Grey with the yellow highlights to tie it in with the rest of the bikes in the lineup. So I think that's probably my favorite of the bunch. It looks kind of stealthy, doesn't it? Anyway, as for the price, let's go up on the stage here, mate. Look, we've got an opportunity to stand next to this bike. So we think this bike is probably TBC on the pricing at the moment, but we think it's probably going to come in at around 10 grand. Interesting on the pricing front, I think the main competition is going to be the Honda Transalp, which has been announced here today. I don't know what the pricing is for that yet, but it'll probably be similar. Also the Tenere 700 that we just mentioned, that I think is just shy of 10 grand nowadays. So it'll be interesting to see how it feels out on the road versus that bike and whether it can nick a few sales from what is ultimately pretty much the best selling middleweight adventure bike. And also at 10 grand, you know, it really does have to perform because you're not that far from bigger capacity, perhaps more feature-laden bikes like the Tiger 900 from Triumph, you know, so it really does have to perform, but I'm looking forward to finding out what it's like. As always, I'd love to know what you think of it down in the comments below. We're here at EICMA for the next couple of days covering all of the major releases, so if you want to see all the videos that we publish, I've made a playlist and you can find it by clicking around here somewhere. Keep up to date with that and you'll see all of the best new bikes. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.